Powered by NEI Global Relocation. This is Relocation Leader, the podcast where we help advanced professionals in the world of global mobility. Now, here's your host, Zach Turbis.
Welcome to another episode of Relocation Leader. I'm your host, Zach Turbis, and today we have IOR in the house. Joining us from IOR is Christina Miller, the Senior Manager of Global Client Solutions, and Rita Shulda, the Senior Director of Global Training and Innovation. Welcome, guys.
Hi, thank you.
Could you explain your roles in a little bit more depth and what IOR does just in general for our clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the relationship manager at IOR for a lot of our key clients. And so I get to work closely with a lot of the NEI team to implement new clients and solutions for those clients. Our key business units are destination services, language training, and cultural training.
And I get to oversee our language training business unit as well as our cultural training. And the innovation part of my role comes into play because I get to oversee projects that kind of cross multiple business unit lines and make sure that the right players are involved and get everybody on the same page. But I also oversee our technology division at IOR as well. So it's a very large umbrella, and I've got 3 teams underneath.
Nice. So big question. Did you guys, when you were kindergarten, thinking about what you wanted to do when you grew up, know that you wanted to be in relocation doing what you're doing?
1,000%.
No.
Yes. See, you're the first one. I was just waiting for you.
Yes.
How did you guys end up here then? I'm just curious.
Christina, go ahead. You've got a fun story.
Yeah, I mean, I've relocated a lot. I'm originally from Puerto Rico. I've bounced around the U.S., have been relocated by RMCs, and then most recently had moved from Aspen back to the Chicago area where I am now, and wanted to be closer to family, and connected with IOR from a colleague at the employer I was at here in the Chicago area, and landed here and absolutely fell in love, as many of us do, and can't imagine anything else now.
I found out about the relo industry while I was just finishing up my grad school. I was working at a record store, slinging vinyl records, and somebody who I just knew from shopping at the shop would just hang out with me every so often on my weekend shifts. And she was working at IOR in the cultural training division. And so I was studying language at the time. I knew I didn't want to teach. And she was like, hey, we have a language opportunity opening up. Sounds right. Why don't you try? And yeah, it was great. It was perfect timing right when I was finishing grad school and got me back out of my college town and into Chicago.
Nice. So this is the second time we've had IOR on the podcast. First one was Olga. And, with Olga, we really covered a lot in terms of cultural training. But for this one, we're going to be talking everything language. But there is some overlap. So I was wondering if you guys could kind of talk about the overlap a little bit.
Certainly. Language gives you the literal language, the words to use to describe the culture and to engage in the culture, and vice versa. Not knowing the real culture behind the language means that you're missing out on the true meanings of idioms and phrases and why people say things the way they do. And, it can be something really small like an idiom, and it can be something really large, like certain languages have directionality, for example, really built into the way that their grammar works. And so knowing if something is north or south matters in terms of what verbs you use, and how that interplays into what they value is so, it matters to them where the lake is, where their home is in relation to others. There's hierarchy within that. And so the two of them play with each other, and you can't really have a full understanding of one without at least dipping into the other. So language and culture are both so interwoven.
My life is a tangle of language and culture. I'm originally from Puerto Rico, and so the language is very much a part of my life, and Spanish and English mixed together. The movie Spanglish is, I think, a fun example of how the fluidity of languages mixed together, of how language is connected to culture, how multiple languages come together. And yeah, that it's all mixed together in a really beautiful way. My children now speak a little bit of Spanish, but they hear me speaking Spanish with my family, and they can mimic the tone of me speaking Spanish perfectly. So a lot of times they're babbling, but they sound, if you don't speak Spanish, like they are speaking Spanish. And so people will say, it's amazing, your kids are so fluent. They're babbling. So to the outsider, they're like, wow. And I know they're just making things up, but they know the tone. So it sounds like it. So, yeah.
How would you describe the importance of the language aspect for people moving either into the US or to another country? How do you explain the importance of that language component?
When a family is on a relocation, there are so many barriers to what that family will consider to be success. And I think that a major barrier that people often don't consider as much is just true confidence and feeling secure. And language training can really help build that confidence for every member of the family. Kids need it to engage socially and to engage in their lessons. Spouses need it to, maintain order of their family home or to search for their own work. Employees need it because if they, they need to work in that language or manage a team and show that team that they are, a trusted, respected leader. And so without a foundation of language, you're missing a really key element of confidence that just lets you take that first step. So yeah, it's really scary for kids to not have friends and to, be in a new room and to try to make new friends. But throwing in a language barrier there just complicates that like so immensely. And giving anybody just a little bit of language acquisition and language skill gives them just one step that, just one thing that they can walk into a room with a tiny bit of confidence and introduce themselves or just, lay the cards out on the table. I don't really know the language. This is the sentence that I've memorized. Can somebody help me? And it just, evens the playing field a little bit. And so I really think language training helps so much in building up that confidence and allowing everybody in the family to be more successful. We joke around at IOR a lot that we should offer language and cultural training for domestic moves too. And that's kind of a perfect example where it's like, even something as simple as the slang that they use or the language that they use colloquially in that school can be so different and so jarring if you're not used to what, how people talk and how people engage with each other. It just creates barriers between you and others.
I think of traveling. I travel into different countries, and I think of the difference that even just a little bit of language can create, of that native language can create with connection. And I make a point to learn greetings and thanks and where's the bathroom and things like that. And one thing I noticed is that when you take the time to learn a few phrases at a restaurant, you get a little bit more connection with the people that are working with you. You tend to get a little bit better service, especially in relationship cultures. You can get a little bit more of kind of the insider experience of having been invited back to family parties and things like that, just from a little bit of that connection that often just stems from knowing just a little bit of language of where you are. As we talk about it with clients, while it can seem overwhelming to become completely fluent in a new language, I think when you look at it from the perspective of just taking kind of a bite off of that, right? And learning key phrases and learning how to begin communicating in a language, that can feel a lot more palatable and that you can start making those initial connections and can make a difference.
But why should we go and learn Dutch if they speak English too, And it's like, because I can effectively communicate in English and they can understand me. Isn't that what we're all after? And it's like, yeah, but like there's sort of higher levels of achievement that you could be trying to, or that you're leaving on the table if you don't take the extra time to really foster that sort of inclusion by trying to learn the language.
Oh, absolutely. And particularly where there's a manager and subordinate relationship happening. Oftentimes managers are chosen to relocate because they already have enough of the language skill, to get by. But maybe the language of their business is their native language. So is it really necessary that they improve? I guess you could make an argument one way or another, but it just shows the team that you're invested in them and who they are, and you're invested in understanding them completely. As Christina said, fluency is a large goal here, but every little bit that you learn just gets you a little bit closer to true understanding on both sides. And I think, I have a lot of people on my team that I manage, and respect is huge. I want that respect to go both ways. And how can I ask them to respect me if I'm not respecting a core of who they are by just engaging with it on a minimal level if I can? So I think it's so valuable, and really just allows people to connect more genuinely.
Nice. And, like what you said about confidence too, I think that I know Spanish to a very small degree, but there was definitely a point in my learning Spanish where I did stop worrying about sort of, am I saying this correctly versus, are you understanding? Are we communicating? And you sort of learn how forgiving people are once you actually engage and try. And that sort of reorients, or at least it did for me, it reoriented how I was thinking about learning Spanish. I was no longer just consumed with like, am I doing this perfect? Now I'm more just like, am I able to play this game? Am I able to engage? And often I would walk away knowing that I didn't do the best, but feeling better anyway,
Exactly. I have an example to share. I recently went to Paris for a day. I was in London, took the channel to Paris, and my husband speaks French a little bit. He's learning. I don't speak French at all, but I speak Spanish and Italian, all Romance languages, all, very Latin based and have similar root words and things like that. So I'm flying high on confidence. I'm like, I can walk into any room. I'm sure I can understand things. I'm absolutely slapped in the face with reality the minute I hear their accents. I'm like, oh my God, this is scary. But I still have that like desire to connect, and that confidence within me where it didn't stop me. I'm walking into a store, bonjour, I'm trying, and it always worked. Oftentimes we ended up speaking English, but I didn't really walk away from any of that trip feeling like people hated me. I was the ugly American in the room, and I'm trying to, I don't know, like combat that or anything. It felt genuine. I was connecting with people. I had a really wonderful day, and I felt included. It felt really wonderful.
So Christina, when you came over from Puerto Rico, when was that in your life, and sort of what was the first experience that you had?
One of the things that I noticed as being kind of different was just that we spoke a different language at home, and our culture, our cooking, doing things at home was different than my peers. And I remember as a kid, you want to kind of fit the mainstream. You want to sort of fly under the radar as a kid growing up. And I think as you get older, you realize that's your superpower, to stand out and to be unique, and, that you don't want to be like everybody else. And so I think the earlier that you can realize the beauty of having that unique experience, or being a little bit different, or getting to relocate, the better off you are.
I think
Nice.
Adults and parents these days are so much more willing to nurture that native language at the same time as a new language, which I think is so amazing. Another personal story from my side, my family immigrated from Italy, and my grandma lived with us for a long time. She never spoke English, and so Italian was the language in our home. And I started school. I'm a bit of an introvert. And I remember my mom and my grandma came to pick me up from preschool one day, and the teacher pulled her aside and said, Rita's having some trouble making friends. And my mom immediately went to, oh my God, it's because she doesn't speak English that well. She's afraid. And it was like night and day in our home. We did not speak Italian anymore, unless you're talking to Nana, because she didn't speak English. But if we could avoid Italian, we did. And my mom was just so afraid. And at that time, I think that was pretty common thinking that, you know, you just had to block out the Italian. We're Americans now. We live in America and we're going to speak English. And I didn't realize how much it impacted me until I chose to learn language. And I really enjoyed learning that later on in my life. I ended up choosing to relearn Italian and started from square one there. It just felt so hard because I was like, why am I starting from square one? This is my heritage language. This is what I learned first. And it feels so distant and so far away. But yeah, I'm really glad it came back to me.
What are some of the biggest struggles that transferees have or assignees have when they are moving like to a different location that has a totally different language, different culture? On the language aspect, like how does that impact them and what are their biggest struggles?
Something I tell people all the time is that language training is the one service that you'll be authorized that comes with homework. And that is often very difficult for adults to like fully wrap their heads around. They're setting up home, they're unpacking, they're getting utilities sorted, unless they have the help of our amazing destination services consultants, of course. But they've got a lot going on, not to mention they have a new job role. And there's a lot of money that their company is putting behind them to make sure that they're successful. There's pressure from all directions. And now all of a sudden you're telling me I have to complete workbook pages 11 through 17 tonight? Like, I've had it. So just finding the motivation to really engage in class is difficult for the adults. On the kids' side, that buy-in is a little bit easier. Oftentimes kids are sponges and they'll just take in whatever language. So countering that narrative is sometimes pretty difficult, where yes, the kids, they will learn and they'll start to ingest that a lot more naturally than the adults will, but they still need that structure in order to really feel that confidence and feel like they, know what's going on. It's not just happening to them, around them. So it's different depending on the family member, I'd say.
I think another challenge is, especially in the age of technology and AI, there's so many ways to sort of get around not knowing the language, but you're also sometimes putting an extra layer between that connection and between creating friendships and building a community locally. And so sometimes you end up in just expat only communities, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but you also want to hopefully connect with the local community. And language firsthand, I think, is a really key way to do that. And I know I use AI occasionally for language as well. And I know when I lean on technology for language, I'm not committing to the homework, committing to the memory work that you need to do to maintain it. And so it tends to be, if you're using Google Translate or using something, it tends to be a in and out kind of transaction, right? Where I'm either using the technology or just repeating it and not committing it to memory at all. And so then you're missing those opportunities to really connect at a deeper level, to understand culture and community at a deeper level. Even if there is a common language that you can speak, I think it goes back to our earlier conversation about what are you missing when you're missing a common language as well.
One of the things that blew my mind was at some point, it was probably like 5 months ago, 6 months ago, I whipped my phone out, I hit the let's talk to ChatGPT button, and I was like, hey, can you teach me Japanese? And it just goes. It was just like, yeah, let's do this. And it started to teach me Japanese. And I was like, wow, oh my goodness, this is crazy. And I was like, well, what about all the people who work with us to help teach language? Is this going to ruin their business or whatever? And the more I thought about it, I was like, this is really cool, but there's always been help. I remember Duolingo has been an app for a long time. I've had it on my phone for a long time. And as funny as they're like, hey, you need to get back to doing this messages are, like the accountability is something that can't really be replicated with professional language training organizations.
Oh, absolutely. Imagine a kid going to soccer practice and their parent is there at every practice, and the kid is looking over at them every time they touch the ball to see that validation on their parent's face. How much different that experience is when the kid is just at practice, gets a score, and just feels amazing inside. Language training with an instructor helps to build that intrinsic motivation that you are successful, you're growing and you're learning. It's pure dopamine that when you connect with somebody and you're able to just like spit out the thought that just comes to your head in your second language and it just flows right out. There's no better feeling than that. There's certainly reasonable application for AI in language training, and we can talk about that. But I think a lot, like if you're using it truly for, just teach me Japanese or teach me whatever, there's that human connection point that's missing. There's that actual success point that's missing. AI is not going to also tell you to be proud of yourself and, feel like you did a great job. You've got to build that within yourself.
It might, but I suspect it lies plenty,
Yeah.
Well, speaking of
I said that, but
lies-
I was like, it probably will tell you that.
But speaking of lies, if you've put in languages that you do speak, you can come up with, and I do think it's gotten better, certainly. But, there's a lot that is not correct. I think we've all come across that in English, asking it things, that we've come across and been like, oh, that's not correct information. And that's true of language, as well. So you need to take a grain of salt, especially when you're using free versions of anything, right?
I know that you have prepared some questions for me, and you may have even told me what they are so that I could have a head start, and I'm ready to share all my answers.
All right. Important question number 1. What fictional language would you like to learn and why?
Gen Z. Just hands down.
I have the perfect
I'm
language trainer for you.
I'm just like, okay, like I watch these videos and I'm like, come again? Like what did I just watch?
Yes.
So I never thought I'd get to that point where like now I'm the clueless generation, but I'm there.
I feel
That's
that.
a great answer.
I feel that. I've got a little first.
Rita, what did you say? You said you had a language. I'm curious.
This is going to out me as a total
Not
nerd.
Gen Z.
But it's Navi. I love
Oh.
Avatar movies, and I just think that would be so cool. Such an interesting language.
All right, now
Sounds interesting.
I rewatched the first one because I was like, all these other movies are coming out, like I'll just rewatch this first one. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's actually really good. Like I enjoyed that movie again. We just went to Disney World this past year and I got to go on the Avatar ride,
I'm so jealous. I
which
really
is
want to ride
sick.
that.
It's a wonderful ride. If anyone gets a chance, it's pretty cool. But yeah, Navi would be cool. How about you, Christina?
I was tossing around fictional languages, and then I decided to arrive, and this is a very parent answer, but I was thinking about how when kids are learning language, and you think of little toddlers, and you think of every parent kind of translating for their own toddler, and that's really kind of its own language when they're first beginning to speak. And it feels like every parent has that phase where their toddler is speaking absolutely nothing intelligible to every other person, but they're like, oh yes, he wants a drink of water, please. And to everyone else, it's like, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
So I was thinking it would be fun to just be able to translate for all those toddlers out there where you're just like, what is happening?
That's a fantastic answer. You got the
love
baby whisperer,
Yeah.
the Navi. I can speak to Gen Z for us. We could be
great.
a trio or
Solve
something.
the world problems here.
What is a second language movie that you like, and did you watch it dubbed or subtitled? Or have you watched a second language movie?
All right. So the only one I could really think of, which is like, it's still a really fantastic movie is, so like, I love watching Passion of the Christ and just going like, how did they do this? Like everyone in there is like speaking Hebrew and Aramaic and Latin and Greek. And I'm just like,
Wow.
when you signed up, did they tell you that you had to do this? Because I would be like, well, come again? What? You
Yes,
know?
we're using ancient languages today.
Yeah. That was
That's
insane
wild.
to me. And so like when I watched that, that's like I mean, obviously there's the narrative and that's fantastic, but the languages stand out to me because like there's no English from start to finish. And it's like the one movie I can watch where I'm just glued to the TV screen the whole time and I don't understand any of the actual language.
Yeah.
I was thinking about other things like Blood Diamond, or I think I mentioned The Last Samurai when Olga was on the podcast, because that's one of my favorite
Oh,
movies. If we're talking just purely like foreign language, it's got to be Passion of the Christ.
awesome.
Well, I think
What
that's the
about you?
power of storytelling, right? If you have a really compelling story, sometimes maybe you don't even need a full understanding of language to get your story across. And I think that's what
Hmm.
makes language fun. If you can speak or understand a little bit, sometimes you can get pretty far. How's your Aramaic?
It could use some work, you know?
Well, I'm sure we have a trainer for that.
I'm sure
Over
we've
to
got
Rita.
someone. Let me search my network.
Nice. So what are you guys' movies? Would we even know what they are?
Maybe I like Pan's Labyrinth,
Mhm.
Spanish language movie. Guillermo del Toro directed, I think.
Okay.
Um, Fantastic movie. I speak Spanish, so I watched it in Spanish, but my husband doesn't, so it was subtitled. And I will admit, I needed the subtitles here and there. I'm not
Mhm.
too proud to admit it.
Fair. Mine's a little bit of a dark one, also a Spanish movie, Mar Adentro. It's around the topic of assisted suicide, so it got a lot of
Ooh.
international buzz because of the topic. It's a beautifully done film, and I think it kind of took a different take on the idea. Yeah, a little bit of a buzzkill.
Well,
No,
hey,
it's all in Spanish, just
Mhm.
top to bottom. Okay.
Yeah. You want to go with question number 3, Rita? It's a tough one.
yeah, how are your Spanish classes going?
All right. So here's the deal. I had done no study since we last talked, but okay, I saw that this question was on here and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do all my prep in Spanglish. And so
Really?
I had AI take my prep notes and make it bilingual prep notes. And so I just listened to it all in Spanish. And so I feel like I should get some credit for that.
Oh, absolutely.
Sure.
An amazing way to learn any language is to do things that you already like to do in that new language. For example, I love listening to music of all kinds. I like listening to band interviews, and I'll find bands in Spain and listen to them being interviewed by their Spanish publications or by a local record store. So it's something I would be doing anyway, and I'm just doing it in Spanish. So like I have the context for it, and you have some of the words that just by nature of being involved in that topic, it makes it just more personal and fun. So I don't know if this conversation is to you what bands are to me and listening to music like that, but I hope it is. And that sounds like a great way to learn a language to me.
I mean, I love learning just in general, almost anything. It is fun to add some Spanish into that. One thing I did notice though, which it surprised me a little bit, it's like I do a lot of passive like ingestion of Spanish, but am not really forced to actually articulate words and in conversations. So there's not like an immersive, Zach gets to sit down and start using his Spanish. So like I find that I understand a lot more than I can actually like speak. And that can be frustrating sometimes when I'm in a conversation with somebody and it's, I should know this because I understand you, but I don't know how to like, you know, to convey that. So I feel like it's working two different areas of the brain. And like, it sounds weird, but sometimes I feel like when I'm forced to actually do that, like it's really hard, but I can almost feel myself like being rewired, you know?
Yeah. And language, it's so hard on your brain sometimes, and it can feel like you reach a plateau and you're just not improving. And it's like, I have so much more knowledge today than I did a month ago. Why am I feeling like this? I've learned so many more words. I've learned to conjugate a verb that in this tense now, and I didn't know that a month ago. But then Language training, it just opens you up to the idea that there's so much that you don't know. And as you progress closer and closer towards fluency, you realize, oh my God, fluency is way further away than I thought it was. So that can be frustrating, especially as an adult. We want things now. We want things as quickly as we can. We have all the technology to support us and things at our disposal, but it still doesn't make it easy. Like you said, you've got to rewire your brain.
And I think that's a really nice plug for talking to humans, right? And the difference between having AI and that being that passive learning and that passive practice being a really critical piece, but having somebody that you feel comfortable and safe with to make those mistakes, to be gently corrected and to practice with, instead of just having it be a little bit more one-sided, is a really critical piece to leveling up.
When people are trying to figure out if language services is necessary, what are some questions that they should be asking themselves? Maybe it's about the assignee or just about what kind of experience they're trying to offer. Like, how do you help them decide whether it's necessary or not? Like you said, sometimes the people, they have experience in that language and that's why they're getting the job. But how would you help them think through that?
Yeah, oftentimes we try to combat people who come to us saying, I know my company's paying for this, but I don't really need it, or I don't have the time. And with somebody who is the employee of the family, we might tell them something like, you might have language knowledge up to a certain point, but we have language trainers in all kinds of disciplines with all kinds of different corporate backgrounds or legal backgrounds, medical backgrounds. We can take you to the next level professionally. So you're not just engaging with the language on a surface level or just to get by, but that you could really elevate yourself. Like, what are your career goals and how can we use language training to help you accomplish those goals? So that's one direction into that conversation. Sometimes with children, we'll get the response that they have second language support at their school. And so language training isn't automatic for the kids. Or if it is automatic for the kids, it might be declined so that they can choose a different activity or do something else. And I find that language training is so important for children who have recently relocated because it's a consistent person that they're meeting with. It's almost like an extension of their school and of their family. It's a friend, it's a professional friend that's there to help me and give me the support. And I can tell them that I'm having trouble in school without it becoming a problem at school and without it escalating further, unless of course it needs to. That language trainer can really help them advocate for themselves. Language training is just so much more than actually learning the language. And like an example of this could be a kid is having trouble with their math class in their second language. And they might not come to their language trainer and ask, I need to learn more about the Pythagorean theorem with you. That's not what they're asking for. What they're asking for is, how can I communicate better with my teacher to tell them I don't really get this? Or I'm afraid that if I go to my teacher with questions, it's just going to turn into this whole thing. Like, how can I really approach them? So it's so much more than just learning language. A language trainer can really help support the family in a whole variety of ways that they don't really know until they try.
We get questions, and sometimes this is mobility related, and sometimes this comes from the development side from clients. But we get questions around presentation coaching or really just working to level up the language, business language, professional language, as part of professional development plans as well. And so I think that's another way that language can really be taken from kind of basic or conversational level and really target the industry and be used to get that next promotion or something like that.
Yeah, I actually have an example to share here. A client reached out to us with somebody who is a manager in their second language with a team of people that are native to the place that they moved. And this person was having a lot of trouble conveying directives to the group. It was often seen as just conversation in meetings. People weren't leaving meetings knowing that they were just assigned a task. And then the manager would follow up and feel really disappointed that there's no progress or deadlines aren't being met or we're falling behind on a project. And part of that is a language issue, using the right words that have the right exact meaning to convey that deadline or that directness. But there's also that cultural interplay there as well, tossing it back to the beginning of our conversation. How do the two really mix together? And there's hierarchy involved in this culture. Language training can help that person to convey their message more appropriately. Cultural training can help them to understand why their subordinates might not hear their direct message as a direct message. And the two of them together can help the team better understand each other, operate more efficiently, and accomplish their goals.
Do you ever see when maybe an executive or a manager moves into a setting where they have to learn a new language in order to communicate with their subordinates, and they find it frustrating because they go from basically being very competent and very able to articulate all their ideas and being seen in a very positive, authoritative light or something, and then they move into a context where they feel like they're crawling, or it's almost like baby talk, and it's how are they going to respect me? How are they going to listen to what I have to say if I'm not able to improve my language skills? So the question's a little bit two-part. It's how often does that happen? And then I know you said some people decline. Do you see a lot of people come back after maybe a week, a couple weeks, and say, hey, I was wrong. I need this?
Yeah, we do see people come back and say, actually, this might help me a little bit. I've seen what you've done for my kids or my spouse, and I want that for me too. So yeah, they definitely do come back. I will say one thing that we tell our language trainers and we encourage our language trainers to do is have the student leave every single lesson with something that they can speak or write or use in their day-to-day life that day or that very next day. And so in this example where a manager is having trouble gaining that respect of their team, or they feel like they just don't have the words to really capture their audience, it's important for that person to build and build, because every time you're in front of that team, you either gain ground or lose it. And so giving them just day after day something new to take back to that group, something just a little bit cleaner, something a little bit more close to what they want to convey, like giving them the words to really express themselves correctly, helps build their own confidence, but also shows the team, my manager is growing, my manager is putting in this effort to learn. It's so hard to learn a language, and just it builds that confidence and respect on both sides.
And back to your question, Zach, about the kind of frequency of that crawling feeling, I think truthfully it's not as frequent. I think more frequently it's somebody leveling up their skills. But when we do encounter that, they stand out. I have Rolodex of stories that are scrolling through my mind right now. And it is a big challenge to overcome. And sometimes it's the assignee that is coming forward and saying, hey, I need help. And then sometimes it's the people around them that are saying, hey, this situation is needing additional support. And the things that got them here are not the things that are going to get them to the next point. And we need to bring in some additional support to make that happen. Then creating a situation with the right trainers and the right supports to get that buy-in from the assignee is really critical. And we've done that successfully a number of times.
Well, I want to thank you guys for coming on. I certainly feel like I learned a lot, and I really hope that our audience has too. That wraps up another episode of Relocation Leader, and we hope you join us back in 2 weeks. Take care.
This has been Relocation Leader, the podcast where we help advanced professionals in the world of global mobility. Listen back here every 2 weeks for a new episode on NEIReload.com or on your favorite podcast platform. We'll see you next time.